Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of DnD Horror Story Cringe. In today's episode, we have a tale about a group that does something messed up behind a dungeon master's back, a story about what happens when a player is overly eager at a game prospect, and much more. So, without further ado, let's get right into the stories. A group streams my campaign without my consent, by Reddit user Awkward Opening. Now, I have read stories here, and all of them sound insane. I always have a laugh, and never thought these things would ever happen to me, or to those around me. Yeah, right. I'll keep the story short, to not write a long text. Recently, I've been itching to play some good tabletop RPGs, as it has been a while since my last game ended. Most of my friends aren't able to currently, so I went to the internet to find a group. It didn't take a long time, and I found a group of 4 friends who want to play but didn't have a DM. I applied, and we had an interview, in which they all seemed like nice people and quite interested in playing. They asked me if I could create a homebrewed campaign, as they preferred it over modules. There was no problem there, and soon we had a campaign, a setting, and started to play. We've been playing for roughly 6 months, and as per their request, we use voice and video. They said it was easier to immerse themselves if they could see facial expressions. No worries on my part there, and we've been having fun. That is until when a friend of mine sent me a text this Friday saying, "Hey, I didn't know you streamed D&D. It looks good." As you can assume, I was confused by that text and asked what he meant. He was even more confused and sent me a link to check it out. What I found was horrifying. Hours of content shared and streamed on a channel I knew absolutely nothing about. They had titles, VODs, a freaking small follower base with comments on the chat. I was horrified. I detest this kind of exposure. This is not something I would accept or want to be part of. I felt violated. I took screenshots of everything and decided to confront these people. Apparently, they were quite shocked that I was able to find it, as they said, and I quote, "Oh, you saw it? It's not a big deal, right? It's just so people can watch it." However, when I pushed it, saying that it was absurd that they did it without my consent and demanded that they put it down, they blocked me on Discord and every other means of communication we had. This is an absolutely horrifying experience for me. I'm talking with a lawyer, and we're looking at what kind of legal action we can take so we can take down the content already posted, and talking to the streaming platform for its exclusion. Still, never freaking believed a simple game would turn into this horror show. Anyway, that's my story. It sucks, but I needed to vent somewhere. Edit. Thank you everyone for the kind messages. Just a few points. Neither myself or the group are American residents, thus why things might be different. Also, some people pointed out the problems with using third-party assets. I don't use anything like that, so I'm not worried. All my maps are drawn by hand, and I use self-made tokens. I just put my phone on a tripod and show the players from that. I like homestyle games, and I'm not that tech-savvy. Anyway, thank you all for the kind messages. Wow, that is super messed up. What I don't understand is, if that group of players wanted a DM for an actual play stream, why didn't they just look for one that would be okay with that? Why go through all the trouble to find a DM and try to hide the fact that they're putting it out there for anyone to see? And it just goes to show you how scummy these people were, that when confronted, they just block OP and refuse to take the VODs down. Hopefully, OP can win on whichever legal authority there is in their country, and possibly get something out of it. Let's move on. Please don't do this to your friends. By Reddit user Accomplished-Bug-143. I thought I was tapped out of stories, but a recent incident happened that I'd like to share as more of a PSA than anything. So I've been chatting with a friend, we'll call him Chuck, about DMing a Starfinder game. Chuck was excited about it, and so was I. I told Chuck that I still needed to find players still, and really nail down a good schedule for me to actually DM it, so the campaign wouldn't really kick off for a while. Later, me and Chuck are in a Discord server with about 10 other people in a tabletop server we hang out in. It was at this moment Chuck decided to announce that I was going to be DMing a Starfinder game and needed players. Being a tabletop server, naturally, almost everyone was on board and started asking questions about the campaign. Since it's been less than a day, I hadn't even thought of a story yet and didn't have anything to tell them. I simply just told them, I'm working through some scheduling issues and will get back with them, if and when I decide to do it. Crisis averted, or so I thought. The following morning, Chuck pesters me asking when I'm going to be DMing the Starfinder game. I told him the same thing I told the other people who asked, and went about my day. Later that night, I get a Discord link from him inviting me into another server. This isn't uncommon. He sends me servers to check out all the time, so I accept it. It turns out it's a server of about 12 people who he said were interested in joining the Starfinder game you were going to DM. It didn't take him long to promote me to owner of the server, and I could already see everyone had been brainstorming character ideas and schedules. When I messaged him in DMs about it and told him that I still didn't have time, nor did I want to host a game with a party larger than 5, he simply said, "I'm sorry, my bad. Well, you can just kick anyone you don't want in the campaign from the server." I hope I'm not overreacting by saying that I'm pissed. I just told everyone in the server that I'm sorry to get their hopes up, but I'm not hosting the Starfinder game anytime soon. The server is deleted, and Chuck has pretty much been apologizing in my DMs for a few hours now. This all just turned into one big mess over something that isn't even in motion yet. I'm not even sure I want to invite him to the game when it actually does happen now. TLDR, I tell a friend about a Starfinder game I plan on hosting. He immediately starts recruiting players for my campaign and creates a Discord server on my behalf before I'm able to plan anything. He gives me ownership of the server and I shut it down. Now, I can understand being excited about a potential new campaign in any tabletop RPG, but Chuck really jumped the gun here and put OP in an uncomfortable position, not once, but twice. I can understand that OP didn't directly tell Chuck that they weren't ready to recruit yet, but he should have taken that by the fact that OP told the group in the Discord that they weren't ready yet. Then to go and make a whole new server and invite people to the game just added to OP's stress. Though at least Chuck apologized after realizing that OP was a tad miffed. If anything, I would say give Chuck another chance once you start the game, because he did seem pretty stoked and excited to play with that system. And isn't that something DMs want from their players? Just maybe tell them to tone it down just a tad. And before we get into the next one, if you're enjoying the video, I hope you consider rolling a crit on that like button and subscribing and clicking the bell. It helps the channel grow, and it makes Lucky, the like and comment kitty, super happy. But with that said, let's get into the story. DM kills player character in his introduction and blames it on the player. By Reddit user, Leave It At That 13. This is not my story. It happened to an acquaintance, and English is not my first language, so I apologize in advance. In this system, challenge rating is made in a way that challenge rating 1 is a challenge for a group of 4 level 1 PCs, or for a level 4 character. As an example, a level 9 giant spider has a challenge rating 2. Encounters are harder, but fewer, and reward far more XP. The table began with a group having a minor solo scene for each, as they got to the city to meet for the first time. Fighter and a city guard had a sparring session outside of the city with a fellow guard. The rogue ran and hid after robbing a corrupt merchant, and then came Cleric of the God of War, my acquaintance. They are all level 4. Cleric was camping for the night, and once morning comes, he only had a few hours of travel to get to the city. The DM then tells him to roll a perception check, which he does, and notices that there are 2 wolves chasing after him, as he apparently camped near a wolf's den, and camping at that particular spot was preset by the DM with no input from Cleric. Initiative is rolled, and combat starts. Things are not going great. The wolves, combined, have a challenge rating 1, which means that it's a challenging fight for a level 4 PC, as both of the wolves were level 2. The second turn begins with a cave wolf, challenge rating 2, level 8, and the pack's leader arriving. This is now a challenging and even unfair fight if it was for a whole group, though to a single PC, it is a death sentence. In 2 turns, he was dead, as he had no chance against an encounter this hard. So, the cleric is dead in his introduction. The DM just says, "I thought your cleric was smart and strong, but he camped near a wolf's den and lost in a fight with a challenge rating lower than his level. That was pathetic." Again, a level 4 PC against 2 level 2 wolves and 1 level 8 cave wolf. Cleric said that he did not want to play anymore. He left the call and decided to take a break from tabletop RPGs. Well, that was a dick move on the DM's part. I think that there was probably more going on behind the scenes, and that the DM just didn't want the cleric in his game, so decided to make an unbeatable encounter in the session 0. Or that DM was just inept, and instead of admitting that he didn't know what he was doing, or just made a mistake, decided to blame it on and insult the player. It is sad to hear that this experience made OP's friend take a break from D&D, though hopefully he eventually found a good group to play with. On to the next story. That time, a new player got upset over my character's trait because it ruined his ideas. By Anonymous. This comes from a D&D 5e game that I was in a few years back, and it requires some important context for you to fully understand the title and what led to it happening, so let me provide it. Additionally, some details have been lost to time, so some info is missing and replaced with my best guess. So, without further ado, I was playing a tiefling monk by the name of Ferocity. Ferocity had several character traits that were notable, but the most important of them all was that he was a man of very few words. So few words that over the span of the first arc, a full 16 sessions essentially, he only ever spoke maybe 3 or 4 times. His words, when he did speak, were always polite, softly spoken, and respectful to the person addressed. There are a few other PCs in the group, so let me give a quick rundown. We had Du, the Water Genasi sorcerer, played by who we will call Tess. There was also Bakanaman, the Kenku rogue, played by who we will call Henry. There was Thelania, an elf warlock, played by who we will call Bob. And finally, come Act 2, the subject of the story, Jorn, a dwarven paladin, played by who we will call Jack. Jack was a later addition because he was a friend of the DM, who we will call Jeremy, but couldn't join during Act 1 because of personal and work matters. From the very beginning of Act 2, Jack seemed determined, upon learning of my character rarely speaking, to make him open up more, without consulting me or the DM, and he'd grow frustrated when my character simply didn't verbally respond to any of his dialogues or attempts at conversation. I explained to Jack, out of character, that Ferocity was an embodiment of the Quiet One trope, and thus only spoke when he deemed it absolutely necessary. That way, his words held more weight. Jack, unfortunately, saw this less as me trying to talk him out of his goal, and more of a challenge to accomplish it. I don't remember every instance of his character trying to start a conversation with mine, but I do remember it having a pattern that went something like this. Jorn, someday, huh? Me. Jorn, still got nothing to say, Hornhead? Me. I later learned that Jack was complaining to Jeremy and the other PCs about my character, not engaging with the group or story, when in truth, my character drove part of the narrative in Act 1. The whole of Act 1 was centered around his home and it having a mysterious plague that needed to be cured. And while he didn't talk, his actions clearly displayed that he cared. He helped secure food and medicine for the infected, searched the ruined sewers under the city for the rumored source of the plague, and fought cultists who were protecting said source before destroying it. In Act 2, Thelania and Du had some spotlight while Ferasi spent time on the side, dealing with the side effects and fallout of his choices in the prior act. But he still dedicated time to helping the party whenever they needed it. When he was told about this fact, he seemed to have backed off. But, as we'd soon learn, he was bottling up his frustration and getting ready to blow. You may be wondering what caused the explosion. It was my character speaking, but it wasn't to the paladin. It was to the sorcerer and warlock, who both needed a few comforting words after an intense scene. My character only said 4 words, but these 4 words, "You both did well," made Jack explode at the table and start cussing me out practically without warning. I can't remember exactly what he said verbatim, but the general gist was that I had it out for him because he wasn't playing a girl, and that I ignored him trying to talk all the time for no reason. He wanted everyone to like my character until I ruined everything. So on and so forth. Jack stormed out, leaving the table stunned and a little afraid, and he never returned. He told Jeremy that he wouldn't join any game I was in because I was Catholic phobic. What? And that I was also unable to play the game right. The campaign continued, and we got another, much more chill player to replace Jack. But even today, we remember the time Jack stormed off because a character trait didn't match up with what he wanted. I kinda like the concept of OP's character. It would make for a great way to learn how to roleplay actions as a way to get points across. Jack just seemed like he had a bit of main character syndrome and wanted Jack to help play into that. But by not speaking, it made it harder for Jack to take the spotlight. I like the idea of a character that only speaks when he feels the need to. And just because he chose to speak one of the few times to help comfort 2 party members that were affected by a tragic event, Jack decided to leave because it wasn't to him. If Jack would have just been a bit patient and something narratively would have dictated OP to speak to him, it could have possibly been a great roleplay moment. But Jack had to be a child and get up and leave in a huff. Honestly though, that table is probably better for it. Though, what do you think? And that is all we have for today. If you have a story that you would like to be shared in a video, be sure to post it to the D&D Doge subreddit, post a link in the comments, or even contact me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope all of your rolls are natural 20s. Until next time.